What's going on, guys? Sticks here from the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and you all knew this deck was coming. Today I am bringing you a deck centered around Yveltal and Garbodor, and before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys like this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and maybe subscribe. It really does help us out a lot, and lets us do more for you guys. And as for the question of the day, when I made the Mega Mewtwo video, the Mega Mewtwo Garbodor video public a little while ago, I was incorrect in saying that Mega Mewtwo was the best deck in the format. That was a result of me having to pre-record the video, and at the time Mega Mewtwo was the best deck in the format. Since then, Yveltal Garbodor has unquestionably become the best deck in the format. And honestly, I am technically pre-recording this like 2 days in advance. So if Yveltal has been passed up as the best deck in the format since I recorded this, I'm just going to cry and quit Pokemon and all that stuff. But hopefully that is not the case, and hopefully this still is the best deck in the format, so I'm not incorrect in saying that. But the question of the day centers around that general idea. What do you guys think will be the new best deck in the format coming up when Sun and Moon is released? That's the list, or not that list. That set has so many potentially good cards that I can see that Yveltal would be dethroned as the best deck in the format in one way or another by one or more of those decks. So my question of the day is, what do you guys think will be the best deck in the format once Sun and Moon is released and once the meta settles down? Had to ask me, I'm honestly not sure. There is a ton of potential. There are a ton of good cards from that set coming out, but I would have to think that there would be something to do with like grass support plus Decidueye GX. I think that the ability to just put 2 damage counters on any of your opponent's Pokemon each turn and use multiple of those abilities will just be ridiculously strong and will have some combination that allows Decidueye GX to be part of the best deck in the format. So I think that that will be the best deck in the format eventually. However, I could very well be wrong. That's just what I think based on looking at those cards and doing a lot of theory modding. So let me know what you guys think will be the best deck in the format and why. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. But on to this deck that I'm doing right now, Yveltal Garbodor. Like I said, in this particular list is an exact copy of Michael Pramawat's list that he piloted to a, I believe it was a regional win. So I decided that if I'm going to show off this deck, I might as well show off the one that had the most success, and that was Michael Pramawat's list. And obviously centered around Fright Knight, Yveltal, Yveltal-EX, and Garbodor, basically just giving you every possible option to deal with whatever your opponent decides to bring and whatever deck your opponent decides to bring. So really just giving you plenty of options to have good matchups against all of the current top tier meta decks. I'm going to go by the Pokemon one by one. I know that sometimes I jump around, but today I'm just going to go at them one by one, tell you what they do for the deck, and tell you what matchups they help out with. Shaymin is great. I mean, just Shaymin's in almost every deck, in every top tier deck right now at the moment. I think Shaymin is a part of, except for Greninja Break, although Greninja Break has really fallen recently, especially with Garbodor rising in popularity. So I don't consider Greninja Break to be a top tier deck anymore. It's still a deck that needs to be watched out for, but it is not a top tier deck. So I think that I'm correct in saying that every top tier deck runs a couple copies of Shaymin. So Shaymin is just so ridiculously powerful. As for the Fright Knight Yveltal, this just gives you such a great matchup against all mega decks and all really just all EX heavy decks, because Fright Knight shuts off the ability to have Spirit Links not end your turn, so your opponent is forced to end their turn in order to Mega Evolve, and then Pitch Black Spear just spreads damage so ridiculously well. 3 energy does 60 and 60 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon EX, so 3 energy for 120, that is great. Just set those things up to be able to be knocked out later in the game, and this Yveltal can single-handedly win you some matches, so that's why this card is so ridiculously good in the meta right now, particularly in the Mega Pokemon heavy meta right now. So Yveltal helps with the Mega matchups. As for the other Yveltal, the bigger Yveltal is the Yveltal-EX with Evil Ball, and why Cyclone Evil Ball is just... I mean, this card's been powerful since it was released in XY, and this card is still terrorizing the meta today thanks to the promo that was released. I'm just still using the full art because I love full art Yveltal. I think that this card looks so ridiculously cool, and obviously Evil Ball. Evil Ball and Y Cyclone can really, really hurt your opponent. Evil Ball is obviously the attack that you're gonna be using more often than not, just because, I mean, that's... You load up a bunch of energy and just take multiple knockouts to where your opponent cannot respond quickly enough, and you're able to just steamroll through them with this Yveltal-EX. So these two Yveltals are the main attackers of this deck. However, this deck would not be complete without the Garbodor with Garbotoxin to shut off abilities of your opponent. This is where you shut off things like, I mean, Greninja Break, again, while I said it's not top tier, Garbodor is basically just a win con against them in general, because you just set up Garbotoxin. They cannot go for a giant water shuriken or anything like that, so you shut off their abilities, and then Yveltal, you just load up a big Yveltal and steamroll through their deck. Garbodor is so invaluable, and then against decks like Mega Rayquaza or decks that rely on constant draw support from Shaymin, like also Mega Gardevoir, Garbodor shuts down the Dragonite, Hoopa, and Shaymin abilities, so your opponent is not able to consistently fill a bench full of those Pokemon, and you're just in a position to where, again, power up an Yveltal or an Yveltal-EX and just steamroll through your opponent. So this deck really just has everything it needs to destroy the meta and counter all of the top tier meta decks. And this deck is so strong, in fact, that a counter deck, the Vespiquen Zebstrika a counter deck, can be used to great success. I mean, someone I know placed right outside of top 8. I think they were number 9. They just missed top cut at the tournament where Pramawat used this deck in order to win. And if a deck is so strong that a straight up counter deck is able to place so highly, that's how you know how meta defining it is. As for the items, running 2 Enhanced Hammer to get rid of basically DCEs, but also double dragons if you go up against like a Giratina or something like that that could potentially be a problem. But mostly it's for the mirror match, get rid of the DCEs to give you, I guess, the leg up on attachments, and also the, well, leg up, and also get you further ahead as you're attaching, so you're able to attack for more damage more consistently. 1 Escape Rope to be able to obviously get out of the active spot if your opponent, like Lysandre's up your Garbodor and has a Fright Night Yveltal active, and you really, well, I guess, actually, never mind, not Garbodor, but if you have something that is Lysandred up and you cannot like realistically attach and retreat, because these guys do still have pretty heavy retreat costs of 2 apiece. You don't want to have to discard a DCE in order to be able to do that, so Escape Rope gets you out of a sticky situation. 4 Max Elixirs to help power these guys up as quickly as possible. 1 Super Rod to put some stuff back that you might have discarded with a Sycamore or an Ultra Ball. 4 Ultra Ball to consistently get everything out. 4 VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. And as for the supporters, you have the 4 Sycamore and 3 N for draw support. Just make sure you have it when you need it. Always have consistent draw support. 2 Lysandre to bring up some stuff to be able to attack those guys when you need to. 1 Delinquent to help get rid of Parallel City if you need to place something else down, and also put your opponent's hand low. 1 Pokemon Center Lady. This is something that I was actually kind of surprised was in this list, but it makes sense. If you have an Yveltal-EX with a Fighting Fury Belt, your opponent will probably have trouble knocking it out in 1 hit. So being able to Pokemon Center Lady to get damage off of that, and also get rid of any potential like paralysis or poison or something like that that could slow you down, Pokemon Center Lady is great for that. And then Team Flare Grunt, in the same vein as the Enhanced Hammer, help put you ahead on the attachments and disrupt your opponent to keep them from attacking while you are able to take prizes. As for the stadium, of course, we are running Parallel City, and another reason we're running Delinquent is because if your opponent plays a Parallel City, you cannot counter Parallel City with Parallel City. I mean, that just... You can't counter a stadium with a similar stadium, so you don't want to be locked in to having only 3 bench spots all game. So being able to Delinquent gets rid of your opponent's Parallel City, lets you have those bench spots back, while also making your opponent discard 3 cards from your hand and allows you to play your Parallel City to put them down to 3 slots as well. So Delinquent is our way of counter stadium other Parallel Cities. 3 Fighting Fury Belt to attach to our Yveltal-EX and also to Fright Knight Yveltal. I mean, if you have its ability, if you have Fright Knight shut off with Garbotoxin, this guy all of a sudden has 170 HP and is still a basic non-EX, so it's 1 prize, but it's still pretty difficult to take out. Also running 3 Float Stone. We need these guys, we really do, and running 3 allows you to have them when you need them for Garbodor, and Float Stone is what you're going to want to attach to Garbodor, because that thing has a nasty 3 retreat cost that you really don't want to have to deal with. And even if you play an Escape Rope, all your opponent has to do is Lysandre that thing back up, and, well, your Escape Rope's spent, and then you're going to have to manually attach and retreat, which you don't want to do. So you need a pretty high number of Float Stones in order to be able to make sure that Garbodor has a tool and the tool that you want. And then running 4 DCEs because our attackers rely on DCE, and then the 9 Darkness. So we are able to not only attack with our main attackers, but also hit Max Elixir when we need to. So yeah, pretty straightforward deck idea. I mean, the deck idea in itself is straightforward, but the way you use it in each matchup is very, very complex, and the thought process that went into this deck is very complex, which shows you how successful this deck can be with the obvious thought that goes into and the meta countering that it has the ability to do. So yeah, let's just go ahead and see this top tier deck in action. Alrighty, we have found one against MT Miles Trevor. I guess that's like his initials, and then, I don't know. Either way, it looks like we are up against a Mega Mewtwo deck, so the Fright Knight Yveltal will be absolutely invaluable in this match. And would you look at that, I start off with it immediately, and with a, you know, it's a solid hand. That is a solid hand. I'm okay with this. I'm actually going to start with the Trubbish active because I can potentially get a Pitch Black Spear off turn 1, or at least, yeah, I would be able to get it off. Sorry, I forgot whether I was going first or second, even though I literally just saw it happen, so there's that. But yeah, with this combination of cards, I can potentially get a Pitch Black Spear off turn 1, and I really don't need the Fright Knight active immediately, or I guess the Fright Knight, I don't need it to be locking my opponent's tools from having any effect immediately, just because my opponent cannot evolve turn 1 anyway, so I'm really not worried about that. And basically I'm going to have a Float Stone on the Trubbish, or at least that's the item that I would like, that I would most like to have on the Trubbish. So basically I'm just doing everything I can to increase my odds of getting a turn 1 Pitch Black Spear off, because against Mewtwo, that will be absolutely invaluable, as simply the turn that my opponent has to use to evolve into Mega Mewtwo will allow me to get 2 Pitch Black Spears off, snipe down some Shaymins, set up my opponent's Mega Mewtwo to get knocked out next turn with like a, probably with a Evil Ball or a, well, I guess it wouldn't be a Y-Cyclone. Yeah, it could be a Y-Cyclone. You know what? It could even be knocked out with a Y-Cyclone, and my opponent is just loading up with Mewtwo. Jeez, should run a Salamence in this version or something. Or run a Salamence in this version of my deck or something like that. But my opponent does get a very solid start. Apparently didn't want any Shaymin. So that's interesting. What I am going to do is go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of the Center Lady and the DCE to grab a Shaymin. I want to keep my odds as high as possible of hitting the Max Elixir, which I do. So all I need is a Float Stone, and I will be able to pull off a turn 1 Pitch Black Spear, and this is precisely why I wanted to start with a Trubbish. So I'm going to go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of the Team Flare Grunt and the Delinquent to grab, yeah, you know what, let's grab an Yveltal. That way my Fighting Fury Belt can go ahead and go on that and not be wasted on my Yveltal. And then I'm just going to Sycamore away, get rid of the Trubbish, and don't get a Float Stone, so that's kind of unfortunate. And then I missed the Max Elixir, so was not able to pull off a turn 1 Pitch Black Spear. I mean, I would have been able to had I been able to retreat the Trubbish, but unfortunately did not draw into any of my Float Stones. My opponent will be able to knock out my Trubbish with his Mega Mewtwo, so that is kind of scary. But what I can also, well, actually, yeah, he'll be able to knock it out. So I probably should have played the other Trubbish down, but really, I don't need any more ability locks except for like a Shaymin. I guess that could be something kind of annoying. What I am going to do is start powering up my Yveltal-EX Lysandre in one of my opponent's Mewtwo's. That way I can start targeting it down with Pitch Black Spear. I don't necessarily want to Sycamore, just in case I draw into something that I can use. Actually, you know, I couldn't have Sycamored because I just Lysandre. Wow, I am out of it. I'm making the right plays, but my commentary is leaving something to be desired. Either way, my opponent's tools will not do anything, so can't even attach a Float Stone to get anything going. What I am going to do this turn, screw it, play the Fighting Fury Belt onto the Shaymin because otherwise it's worthless, and then just Sycamore away the rest of my hand, probably power up my Yveltal-EX even more. Ooh, get another Fright Knight Yveltal, play the DCE onto that guy, and then I'm just going to Enhanced Hammer away my opponent's DCE. And then, you know what, let's Fright Knight again. Go ahead and get some more damage onto this Mewtwo and target down my opponent's Mega Mewtwo on the bench. That's the thing that I want to target down the quickest, because that's the only thing that is currently able to really do damage to me. And okay, even see the Team Flare Grunt from my opponent's well, from my opponent, not from my opponents. I'm only playing one person at this time, but I mean, it's not too huge of a deal. Yeah, now 3 of my DCEs, or 2 of my DCEs are in the discard pile, but I do have the let's go ahead and actually Ultra Ball do I want to Ultra Ball? Because what I can do is actually, let's first Escape Rope. Yeah, let's Escape Rope, let my opponent go into something, and then if he goes into his Mewtwo, I can go into my Yveltal. If he goes into his Mega Mewtwo, I can go into my Yveltal-EX. If he goes into something else, I can just go into my other Fright Knight Yveltal. He goes into the Hoopa. That is fine with me. I will just go ahead and bring active this Yveltal, hopefully get a Darkness Energy, which I do. And I even get a Max Elixir so I can power up my Yveltal-EX on the bench. That is great, assuming I hit it, which I do. Phenomenal. And yeah, I think I'm just going to go for the Yveltal-EX at this point. Go ahead and attach another energy and Pitch Black Spear the Hoopa, and do I want to take the knockout on the Mewtwo or keep targeting down the Mega Mewtwo? I think my best play, targeting down the Mega Mewtwo, put that in range of being knocked out by another Pitch Black Spear next turn, and yeah, I mean, I'm in a phenomenal position. My opponent can't attach a Float Stone or anything like that. He will have to manually attach or use a switch to get his Hoopa out of the active spot, and that's why I also decided not to knock out the Mewtwo on the bench, just because, I mean, that's there whenever I want it. That Mewtwo will be there whenever I want it to knock out, and I knew that my opponent might play an N, so I really wasn't too worried about that. And actually what I can do this turn is even take 4 prizes by knocking out the Mega Mewtwo and the Mewtwo on the bench, or what I can do is just keep the Hoopa active, hit that thing with Pitch Black Spear, and then knock out my opponent's, probably the Mewtwo, just because that the Mega Mewtwo will continually be in a position to where I can knock it out with a Pitch Black Spear. Like, that's not going to change. What can change is the fact that my opponent might choose to Mega Evolve his Mewtwo on the bench, which would negate my ability to take a KO on it with a Pitch Black Spear next turn. But what do I want to do? So I think at this point I'm just going to Sycamore. I don't want to give my opponent a fresh hand. And believe it or not, I mean, my opponent is technically winning. By the prize count, my opponent is technically winning, but I just have such ridiculous control of the board at this point. Do I want to play another Yveltal down? I don't think so, and I'm going to hold on to the Max Elixir for now. Then I'm going to take the knockout on the Mega Mewtwo. Actually, I changed my mind because that thing is, I don't know, I'm just paranoid of it getting like a DCE on it or something and being able to knock out my Yveltal that's active. So I will still have 4 prizes on the board, knock out the Hoopa and the Mega Mewtwo, and I mean, I'm still in such a phenomenal position. Like, I'm now technically winning by the prize count, but the game is pretty much over. Even if my opponent ends me, I still just have everything I need on the board in order to be able to win. I mean, my opponent can attach a Float Stone. It won't matter at all because I can still attack, and my opponent can't. My opponent will not be able to retreat the Hoopa because of Fright Knight, and the Mewtwo is on the bench. I mean, that thing's going to be knocked out next turn. And see, my opponent plays the Float Stone, but it doesn't matter at all. My Yveltal's Fright Knight keeps the Float Stone from working properly, and I will be able to take my last 2 prizes next turn. My opponent sees that and concedes the game. I mean, there was really nothing they could do at all, especially once they played their manual attachment onto the Mewtwo. I mean, they could have tried to dig for a switch, but clearly they weren't able to get it. So I was just able to come through in that match and take the victory with Fright Knight Yveltal, just having such a phenomenal matchup against Mega decks. So yeah, I mean, that is one matchup where, I mean, it just shows why this deck is currently the best deck in the format. So that shows it right there. Mega Mewtwo was the best deck. Yveltal has taken that mantle now, and we see exactly why with Fright Knight just being able to spread around so much damage and just get to a point where my opponent couldn't do much of anything. So yeah, that was match one. Let's just go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alright, so I was able to screw my head back on tightly and hopefully not commentate as weirdly as I did in that first match. But either way, found one against Pyrotom 23 with, I mean, looks to be a Volcanion deck. I mean, that could just be the coin, but it seems like everybody's coin is telling of what type of deck they're running. That's why I like to just go with the type coins, because my opponent can see what types I'm running from the very beginning. Like, they can see that it's like, oh, my opponent is running a dark and is running like a dark, psychic, and normal deck. So, I mean, they're going to see what types I'm playing anyway, and I don't necessarily like giving away all of that information immediately. That being said, if I have a Gyarados deck, I'm going to run a Gyarados coin. I just really, really like Gyarados coins and all of that. And my opponent seems to be taking their sweet time calling the coin flip. What is it with Volcanion players and taking their time? But either way, we do lose the coin flip, so we will go second again. Hopefully, I can pull off another Pitch Black Spear, because that would be really, really cool if I'm able to do that. And doesn't look like it, but I do get a pretty darn awesome hand, because I can just Ultra Ball for an Yveltal, something like that, power that thing up with the DCE, Max Elixir, and all that, and my opponent actually starts with a Hoopa. So this is even better for me, because locking my opponent's Hoopa in the active spot will mean that I have a little more time to set up than I normally would, which gives me the ability to, well, I mean, I guess it allows me to play a little bit safer, spread out my energy, and not have to try to go all in as immediately as I normally would. My opponent plays the Float Stone on the Hoopa. Too bad that won't mean anything, as well as the Fighting Fury Belt. And one play that I really, really am fond of doing is if my opponent has a Fighting Fury Belt on his Volcanion and say it has like 140 damage, so it's not knocked out yet, and I have like my Yveltal-EX active or something to that extent, what I love doing is switching into my Fright Knight Yveltal and just taking a knockout for switching. I think that is easily one of the more fun things that I have been able to do with this deck. So I really do enjoy playing this deck. But my opponent is going to go ahead and Sycamore, get a brand new hand as Sycamore, discard 0. You know what? I'm going to give him a high five for that, because no matter who you're playing, if your opponent has a 0 discard Sycamore or Juniper, they deserve a high five, because, I mean, they were able to play their hand out perfectly to where it was just like, you know what? Just give me a new hand. I have no drawback from playing this card, no discard, just give me a brand new hand. And that's just something that's cool to see. My opponent does get a very... Wow, my opponent gets a very nice setup right now. Not sure why they attached to the Volcanion and then flash fired, but I mean, hey, to each their own. What I am going to go ahead and do is... That's not the Ultra Ball, that is the Darkness Energy, but discard the Darkness Energy and the Delinquent to grab, I think, an Yveltal. Yeah, to grab an Yveltal-EX, go ahead and play that sucker down, be able to play the DCE onto it, and then Max Elixir, maybe if I can get a switch or something like that. I do not, so that is kind of unfortunate. And then I'm going to get a brand new hand, see what I can do from there, and get a Max Elixir, so that is pretty nice. Let's go ahead and play that. Whiff again, so 0 for 2 on Max Elixirs. Let's see if I can Shaymin for something. Maybe Shaymin for like 2 cards or something like that. And nope, don't get anything. I would have really, really liked to get a Trubbish down, because if I can get a Trubbish down, I will essentially shut down my opponent's deck. Like, there's almost nothing my opponent can do apart from obviously Lysandering it in and KOing it that would allow him to deal the type of damage he would need to in order to keep up with this deck. So I'm in a good spot. Unfortunately, my opponent has a switch and an end, so I'm hoping my opponent ends me into like a Trubbish and Float Stone, and then something else. But no, unfortunately, I do get something that's pretty solid. My opponent will be able to do some solid damage to my Yveltal right now. What I can actually do, I think... Yeah, I kind of like this play. So what I think I'm going to do is Ultra Ball for a Trubbish. And we see that Flareon getting powered up. I'm scared of that. Oh, I even draw the Trubbish off the... Wow, that is great. So what I am going to do is go ahead and play the Trubbish down. I think Lysandre in... Do I want to Lysandre in the Volcanion or the Hoopa? I think what I want to do is go ahead and Lysandre in the Volcanion, and then that way I can evolve next turn, and then go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of the... Do I want to get rid of the Sycamore or the Yveltal? I think... Yeah, I like this play. Let's go ahead and get rid of the Sycamore and the Yveltal to grab the Shaymin. I can Super Rod the Yveltal right back into the deck, as well as that Darkness Energy that I discarded earlier. Play the Shaymin for 5 cards. Hopefully draw into something that allows me to, you know, start attacking and not just sit there. And that is... Wow, that is as good... That's pretty much as good of a hand as I could have hoped for. I think at this point... Even though I didn't attach to my Yveltal first turn, I think I'm just going to go ahead and attach to it, threaten the Pitch Black Spear turn 2 if I'm able to get a DCE. And, I mean, I already have the Garbodor. I'll be able to use that thing next turn and lock down my opponent's Steam Up and Flash Fire. So I'll be able to somewhat limit. And, of course, my opponent draws into the Olympia. So that's unfortunate. I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. But on the bright side, I still have a Garbodor ready to go. My opponent is down to 5 prizes, so we are behind. But I think at this point, I am in a good enough position. I am going to go ahead and Ultra Ball. Might as well, because I'd be discarding that stuff anyway, and I might as well get something out of it and also get a card that I wouldn't necessarily want to draw with the Sycamore out of my deck. And I do need the Darkness Energy, which I do get, so I will play that onto my Yveltal right there. Go ahead and retreat, and yeah, I'm just going to Evil Ball, go ahead and get almost a knockout on the Flareon. I was 10 damage short, so quite unfortunate right there, but I can also start powering up my Yveltal on the bench. Unfortunately, my Fright Night Yveltal is prized, so I would have liked that at this point to be able to, I don't know, like bring the Volcanion up and then snipe the Flareon on the bench. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but you know what? We're fine. I can't even take a knockout with Y Cyclone this turn. Just knock out the Flareon while also getting more... What am I trying to say? Knocking out the Flareon while also getting the other DCE onto my Yveltal on the bench. So I think that's going to be my play. I can also Lysandre, but I don't think that's the proper play. And why did my opponent... Not quite sure why my opponent decided to Fighting Fury Bell to the Flareon, but either way, I am going to get a fresh hand of 6. I'm okay with that. My hand was decent, but it wasn't great, and actually I'm a heck of a lot more okay with that now because of the Max Elixir. Wow, that was really awesome. My opponent is going to be able to Blaze Ball my Yveltal-EX. That is fine with me. And I really don't want to discard all of my Darkness Energy. Why am I drawing it? Okay, at least I was able to hit a Max Elixir on that one instead of drawing into the DCE, which is something I don't necessarily want, especially, or the Darkness Energy, especially when I have a DCE in hand. And I'm not going to Sycamore because I would be getting rid of too many Darkness Energy, and I have no way of getting them back since I already discarded my Super Rod. So I even draw a Sycamore, and I also did not want to N because that would have allowed my opponent to get a fresher hand. Because, I mean, I know he had 5, but he would have gotten 5 off the N and then drawn into 6. So I didn't want to give my opponent a better hand, and plus, I mean, I'm okay with having the energy in my hand because I will be able to continually attach to my Yveltal and keep powering it up. And yeah, that is exactly why I wanted to Y Cyclone. It would, oh, my opponent's going to go for the Garbodor. So, okay, that's fine with me. I will have a fresh Yveltal, and this is exactly why I love Garbodor, because my opponent is forced to prioritize that instead of my Yveltals, which will be just getting powered up like crazy at this point. And I even get another DCE, So I'm going to go ahead and play that onto my Yveltal on the bench. I have Ends, I have Sycamores, I have Lysandre. What I think I'm going to do at this point is actually N, because, okay, let's be real, I don't like having all of those Darkness Energy in my hand. I would rather have other resources and draw them later. And, oh, okay, this is nice. What I can even do is, well, first off, I'm going to Max Elixir, hit one of those many Darkness Energy that I know are still left in my deck, then play the Parallel City, but reduce my opponent's fire damage. I don't want my opponent to be able to get rid of, like, Yveltal, well, not Yveltal, get rid of Hoopa or something like that. I want that thing to be a liability, and I am just going to take the knockout on the Volcanion, draw into my Fright Knight Yveltal, which, I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm in a good position right now, because all I need is to knock out the Volcanion. Well, I just need to knock out one EX and then the baby Volcanion, which it looks like my opponent is going to play down, or my opponent is going to go into. And then I have energy. I have 2 Yveltals powered up with 5 and 4 energy. I mean, I'm in a phenomenal, phenomenal position. And despite that fact that I end my opponent into apparently a phenomenal hand. So that's beside the point. What I am going to do is, so my opponent will get a Flareon powered up. I am just going to keep powering up my Yveltal that's on the bench, because my active Yveltal will be able to one-shot this Volcanion with Evil Ball. I'm completely fine with that. And yeah, I mean, I'm in a pretty good spot. My opponent can get his Flareon in a position to potentially knock out my Yveltal next turn if he draws into the right stuff. But either way, an Evil Ball will knock out the Volcanion. I'll be down to 2 prizes, and I have 2 very, very powered up Yveltals. I can't even Sycamore for more energy next turn if I need it. And as long as my opponent doesn't get a Fighting Fury Belt, the good thing, well, I guess even if it didn't have a Fighting Fury Belt, but the good thing about Flareon is it has to have a lot of energy attached to it in order to attack as well. What I am going to do at this point is go into my Shaymin, because while my opponent will be able to take a knockout on the Shaymin, I didn't want him damaging or knocking out my other Yveltal, because that was my other attacker, and I'd rather have 2 attackers up. I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter that much. My opponent would have been able to get a KO because of the Escape Rope anyway, and I'd rather him take out the Shaymin than one of my Yveltals, because if he gets like an Enhanced Hammer, runs a random one or something like that, and gets rid of one of my DCEs, I'd rather have 2 Yveltals with 5 energy on it instead of 1 Yveltal that's going to go down and another having the energy discarded off of it. So just kind of hedging my bets at this point. Yeah, my opponent will be able to knock out the Shaymin. I'm not sure why maybe he's trying to complete the Fire Daily Challenge or something like that, and that's why he wants to get as much damage onto my Shaymin as possible. But yeah, 170, more than enough to knock out the Shaymin. But luckily my opponent does have 3 energy on him. I have an Yveltal with 5 energy, and I have the game right now. I mean, the game is won. All I have to do is Evil Ball for the knockout. We'll be able to take out the Shaymin, but there's no kill like overkill. Let's attach another DCE and then knock out the Flareon for 230 damage and the game. So that is just, I mean, that is, I don't know, I'm stumbling over my words, but I'm very, very happy with this live because I was able to showcase exactly what this deck is supposed to do against the current meta and why it is so good, and against 2 of the top decks. I mean, I got to show it off against a Mega deck and how the Fright Knight Yveltal can just absolutely tear Mega decks apart, and then I was able to show what Garbodor does in other matchups, and then Yveltal-EX is just always such a good card. I mean, that thing, Evil Ball can hit for ridiculous amounts of damage, and Y-Cyclone isn't even that bad of a secondary attack to save your energy as a last-ditch effort. So I hope you guys enjoyed this deck. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.